Welcome back to Fast Market here on the TD Ameritrade Network. Let's bring in our next guest for our cash tag segment, and that's going to be Megan Brantley, Vice President of Research at LikeFolio. Welcome back to the show, Megan.
Thanks for having me, guys. Happy Friday.
Yep, happy Friday. So we're talking maybe an overlooked stock here. We don't talk about this much on Fast Market. I know we've covered it on the network quite extensively. It's TTD, the trade desk. This is about digital advertising, and you keep on hearing these rumblings, Megan, across the board that ad spend is down significantly. We've seen some of the metrics maybe out of Google Alphabet, Meta Platforms. You're seeing a big pullback in there. What kind of data are you seeing out of TTD?
Yeah, so this is a fun one that we wanted to bring up today because, I think yesterday I might have mentioned that just overall our data is trending a little bit more in the neutral zone, right? We have less of these companies that are, triggering like very bullish signals on our end, but the trade desk is one of those that has really caught our eye, partially because it has extremely high levels of consumer happiness, and these levels of consumer happiness are rising high. And then also just this mention volume is getting really robust. And as you mentioned, this is think of this as like a digital ad platform. This is not one that you would expect to get a lot of consumer mentions, but we are seeing more and more consumers who are talking about the trade desk platform. And I think one really important thing, a nod that we just got on the company's last earnings report, is that it's really outperforming the industry. I think total, like the industry level ad spend grew by about 8% year over year, but the trade desk's rate of ad spend, that grew by 3 times the industry level. So this is outperforming and it's stealing market share, and it's kind of driven by 2 major things. I think the first that you hit on is the shift from this user-generated content, maybe content that may benefit a company like a Meta, for example, in favor of premium streaming content. And then also just a shift in overall ad spend from this linear TV to what TTD specializes in, which is that connected TV. So over the top, the streaming content. And so overall, when we look at our data, I think the really critical things to consider are just the overall shift in consumers who are talking about streaming. While this rate of growth may be slowing, there are still far more consumers shifting into this streaming environment. Even if they aren't necessarily cutting the cord, they still have streaming services like a Netflix, like a Disney, like Paramount Plus, for example. And a lot of these are actually using TTD's platform to serve ads over the network. And then whenever you look at traditional cable, you see that falling. So it's almost like the inverse of this chart that you're looking at here. And you can see that sloping down. And so I think overall, the shift of where advertising dollars are spent is shifting in favor of streaming versus this traditional cable. And there's still a lot of room for growth here. And so I think that TTD really, and our data is outperforming, especially from a happiness perspective, which is really nice on a long-term scale. And then it's also just benefiting from these tailwinds, even at a time when, typically we look at ad spend almost like a headwind. And in this case, it's serving as a tailwind for the trade desk.
Megan, this is the evolution of TV as we know it, isn't it? Away from linear towards connected. This allows advertisers to direct advertising at specific people, so you get less and less misses on the ad dollars that you spend. And even though people may be cutting back, they're also prioritizing their advertising, right? And that is going away from linear TV and towards these. And these, their addressable market, they claim, is $800 billion. And an article I read said, if you're watching a digital ad, chances are Trade Desk bought it, right? And is managing it. And they do that for people. They show companies where to target these, where you get your ideal brand. This is a company at a beginning of a big change in advertising, and all they really need to start accelerating is the whole digital ad pressure to lighten up and reignite, correct?
Yeah, we think that that could be a really significant tailwind for the trade desk. The fact that they are posting numbers like they are and executing like they are in a time when ad spend is kind of pulled back is really impressive. I think it speaks to the power of their platform. One thing that they've really invested in is their technology to allow these, their users to kind of tie their own first-party data to consumers across the internet. So it allows for that really specific targeting, like you mentioned, so that essentially advertisers are able to do more with less. And we see this, it's interesting when you look at kind of what's driving their revenue growth, their rate of spend by these clients is increasing at a far greater rate than the rate that they're growing clients. And so that's really important, I think, when it really speaks to the company's effectiveness at, being able to really target these consumers and also target them in a way that, doesn't necessarily cause any type of data privacy concerns or things like that. And this is kind of a new technology, and this is one that we're seeing more and more people talking about, just being able to leverage this technology to really reach the consumers that they want to reach.
Megan, one of the things, the pullback in digital ad spend, that's been documented, right? It's across the board. But at the same time, every station that is out there is created their own streaming service, right? Is that what maybe some of your data is reflecting, that, hey, it doesn't matter where they're advertising, whether it's on linear or old cable TV or streaming, but now the pie has gotten bigger, and that only helps TTD. Is your data reflective of that, hey, now Paramount Plus has their own, Hulu's out there. We have all these different streaming channels now, and that only benefits TTD.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that I think TTD does well is it allows these users to connect, the same consumer across the internet. And I think that that's really the flex that the Trade Desk has in terms of its technology versus peers, because it kind of sorts through that noise and it allows you to know, oh, this consumer who's streaming maybe is the same consumer that is, viewing in other ways or viewing on different channels, et cetera. And so I think that that's really powerful because it allows advertisers to most successfully reach these consumers. And then overall, just in general, this is a major tailwind, we think, long term, especially as this advertising market improves. But this just to give scale to kind of like the signal that we're looking at when we look at the Trade Desk, a lot of this is driven by really significant improvements in consumer happiness. So people talking about the platform, those levels are up 13% year over year and in the 90s. So whenever we look at companies, to have consumer happiness levels in the 90% range is kind of unheard of. And from a long-term scale, a lot of times when we talk to you guys, we're talking about specific earnings signals, but we also have a long-term signal that we look at that kind of gauges these companies on a similar scale of positive 100 to negative 100. And right now we have the Trade Desk at a positive 95, which for us is really powerful. And so this is just one of the ways that we see kind of divergence forming and where we see momentum building significantly. And maybe the stock hasn't caught up to that momentum yet.
Yeah, this stock rallied from $50 to $66 after earnings just a couple of weeks ago. Now it's pulled back a little bit here, basically around $57 a share. So you guys are positive on this one according to your data?
Yeah, this is one that we're really leaning into from a bullish perspective, and we think long-term that it has plenty of room for future growth.
All right, great stuff and great data as always, Megan. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, guys. You too.
All right, that's Megan Brantley, Vice President of Research, giving us a breakdown here on the Trade Desk.